In 2024, Drew Pritchard did something nobody saw coming. He sold everything. The fairground boat, the vintage signs, even pieces from Buckingham Palace. All of it. Gone. Over 620 items went up for auction and raised around $800,000. But honestly, it wasn't really about the money. It felt more like surrender. The affairs, the divorce, getting banned from pubs, watching a shop close down. It all led to this one moment. The king of British salvage was selling off his life's work, his passion, his soul, basically. What drove him to that point will probably break your heart a little. This wasn't just business. This was goodbye. Drew Pritchard came into the world in February 1970 in the old town of Conway, North Wales. It's one of those places with medieval castles everywhere you look. His family didn't have much. His parents ran a tiny corner shop that barely kept the lights on. Money was always tight. The 1970s hit that area hard. Jobs were disappearing left and right. A lot of families, his included, had to scrape just to stay warm when winter came. But here's where things get interesting. Drew was only 8 years old when he started looking at junk differently than other kids. While everyone else played games, Drew was out there digging through flea markets and dumps. By 1978, he'd collected over 500 bottle caps. He used them like currency at school, trading them for stuff he wanted. Some neighbors thought he was just a weird kid with a strange hobby. Nobody really understood what was going on inside his head. But behind it all was a secret he carried from his grandfather. The old man was a World War II veteran who'd smuggled artifacts back from Europe. He told young Drew stories about hidden treasures and forgotten history. Those stories lit something in Drew that never went out. He started sneaking into old scrapyards and abandoned buildings. One time, he nearly got buried alive when a pile of junk collapsed on him. He escaped, but barely. By 12, he had a collection of war items and old coins worth over $200. He even sold extras for pocket money. In the middle of a broken-down town, this kid was quietly building something. Nobody knew it yet, but it was going to be big. At home, things weren't any easier. His family's income was barely $5,000 a year during the 70s. That meant no luxuries and barely enough heating. His dad worked as a sign writer. He painted beautiful pub signs with real gold leaf. Drew started watching him work when he was just 6. That's when his love for restoring old things really began. But what nobody talked about was how dangerous those paints were. The lead in them damaged his dad's health over time. He developed tremors. By 1980, Drew had seen it all happen. At just 10 years old, he started sneaking tools from his dad's kit to fix broken toys. He got electrocuted once working on an old wind-up car from the 1950s. Had to get stitches. That didn't stop him, though. He started picking apart broken bikes from the neighbor's trash. He stored them in the backyard until the place looked like a proper junkyard. It got so bad that people complained about rats. Still, Drew couldn't stop himself. By 12, he'd fixed and sold about 50 items at markets, made over $300. His father's way of mixing art and restoration left a deep mark on him. But Drew didn't always understand the risks he was taking. He used dangerous varnishes and breathed in toxic fumes without knowing what they could do to him long term. Then, in 1982, a flood hit their family shop, destroyed stock worth $1,000. His parents were devastated, but Drew jumped into action. He salvaged everything he could from the mess. That moment showed what kind of man he was going to become. School was a different story, though. Drew started at Yscol Aberconwy in 1975, but his grades were terrible. By 1980, he was in the bottom 10% of the class. Nobody knew he had dyslexia back then. Teachers just thought he was lazy or distracted. What they didn't see was what Drew was doing outside of school. He was skipping classes, over 100 of them. He spent that time exploring old slate quarries. In one of them, he found a hidden World War II bunker full of dangerous objects. He reported it, but didn't give his name. He was scared of getting in trouble for being there in the first place. Art was the only subject where Drew actually shined. His drawings of broken-down Victorian buildings were amazing. In 1983, he won a regional prize and $50. But even his adventures were risky. In 1984, he fell through the rotten floor of an old mill, broke his arm, never told anyone because he was afraid they'd ban him from exploring again. By 15, he'd explored 40 abandoned places and gathered artifacts worth around $500. He made treasure maps and led classmates on wild hunts. These adventures nearly got him expelled, but they also built the bold, curious spirit that would later make him a millionaire. At 15, Drew started working part-time at a car restoration garage in Llandudno, 1985. He earned $2 an hour. Long summer days surrounded by oil, metal, and sparks. He learned how to fix classic cars, including old Jaguars from the 1950s. By 1986, he'd helped restore 20 cars. But the job wasn't without risks. One welding accident badly burned his hand. He still has the scar today. Around that time, he fixed his first furniture piece, a 20s oak chair. Sold it for a $100 profit. The garage owner was a former race car driver with wild stories about smuggling car parts. That made Drew's imagination run even wilder. By 16, he'd saved $800 and spent it on proper tools. But he didn't realize the garage was involved in shady deals. He'd unknowingly worked with stolen parts. In 1987, police raided the shop and seized $10,000 worth of goods. That was it for Drew. He quit and never looked back. But the skills he picked up there would shape the rest of his life. That same year, 1986, Drew found something that changed everything. A dusty Victorian gas lamp buried under 2 tons of junk in a local yard. Turned out to be a real antique from the 1880s, made by designer William Sugg. He sold it for $50 and bought better tools. That year, he salvaged 15 more items and made about $400. But that junkyard was full of asbestos. Later on, Drew admitted he feared he'd damaged his health working there. He also had help from an old junk dealer who taught him to look deeper. The guy showed him how some objects had secret compartments, maybe even hiding smuggled gems. It was like a whole hidden world. His parents didn't support what he was doing. When they argued about it, Drew packed some things and lived in his van for a week. That didn't stop him. By 1987, he'd made 50 deals and collected $2,000 from selling restored antiques. Youth unemployment in Wales was nearly 15% at the time, but Drew had already found his own way to survive. By 1988, when he turned 18, Drew officially stepped into the world of antiques. He didn't go to college or get fancy training. Instead, he joined a stained glass restorer as an apprentice. The job started small, cleaning dusty vases and carrying heavy doors. But when a van pulled up one day with the words "Architectural Antiques" written on it, something clicked. He realized this wasn't just a job. It was a hidden world full of secrets, rare objects, and skilled craftsmen. Over the next 7 years, Drew worked on everything from stained glass windows to grand fireplaces in old houses. He didn't just learn how to restore things, he learned how to spot value where others saw nothing but junk. Also, in 1988, Drew made his first solo buy. He found a set of broken Georgian chairs and paid just $100 for them. He spent weeks fixing them, sanding, carving, bringing them back to life. When he sold them for $300, it proved he was on the right path. But this trading spirit had started years earlier. Back in school at age 12, he used to trade dinner tickets to buy boots. He listened to punk bands like The Jam and Madness, always thinking of ways to turn small wins into big moves. That thinking helped him open his first small showroom by 1993, just 5 years after starting his apprenticeship. Then came 1990. At 20 years old, Drew did something most people wouldn't dare to do. He took his old van and drove all the way to France. Almost no money, 0 French language skills, just went treasure hunting. He hit markets in Normandy and found rare Art Deco lamps and furniture. Everything cost under $500. He somehow got it all back to Wales, even though customs officers questioned his cargo. He had no real paperwork, but his charm pulled him through. When he sold the items back home, he tripled his money. This trip opened his eyes to something bigger. He wasn't just a local picker anymore. He started buying from places like Norway and Naples, building a network that stretched across Europe. But not every deal was a win. In 1991, when Drew was 21, he lost $500 when a shipment of French ceramics arrived completely smashed. He'd packed them poorly, and they were all ruined. It felt like a punch to the gut. That kind of money meant everything back then. Still, instead of quitting, he took the broken pieces and turned them into mosaic art, sold them at markets. He turned disaster into something beautiful. That's kinda Drew's whole thing, honestly. By 1992, just 22 years old, Drew had a small stall at Conway Market. He sold mid-century furniture like old teak tables and retro chairs. He bought pieces for $20 and sold them for 3 times as much. Even without formal education, he'd built a local circle of 50 regular buyers. He still worked on stained glass restoration, often juggling both jobs in freezing weather. He'd get up before dawn to hit fairs like Newark early, hunting for treasures before the public even got in. It reminded him of those childhood days selling bike parts on the roadside just to buy sweets. Still, his collection kept growing. He started saving huge wood beams from barns and cast iron radiators from empty factories. He was now saving over 50 tons of old materials every year. Designers in London started calling him. Then came a big setback in 1997. Thieves broke into his shop and stole $1,500 worth of items: silver candlesticks, brass pieces from an old Liverpool shipyard. The break-in happened on a foggy night. They used crowbars and left everything in a mess. Drew was heartbroken. Insurance only paid $800. He almost went bankrupt. Turned out the thieves were locals. Some of the items were found at a nearby pawn shop. Police recovered less than half of them. Drew didn't take any more chances. He bought new security systems for $2,000 and moved part of his collection to safer storage. He even started buying heavy-duty safes to sell. That same year, antique shop thefts rose by 25% in Wales. But Drew refused to give up. By 2000, his business had grown a lot. He was making $50,000 a year. He'd found a new love in industrial salvage, pulling out old lamps from factories in Manchester, machine parts from shipyards in Scotland. Once he bought a giant engine lathe for just $500. It weighed 2 tons. After fixing it up, he sold it for $4,000. That's an 8 times profit. One time, a warehouse roof almost fell on him while collecting vintage signs. He escaped just in time and saved 100 enamel signs. His client list tripled. Celebrities started buying from him. He had 2 assistants and was handling over 1,000 pieces every year. But the work wasn't always legal. He got fined $2,000 once for collecting without proper permits. Still, people started calling him a junkyard genius. By the end of the decade, his net worth passed $1 million. In 2002, he got a massive break. A big London hotel hired him to supply antique lights. He found 50 vintage lamps in old warehouses, made a $10,000 profit from that single deal. That would be over $18,000 today. One buyer was a famous actor. That opened doors to more high-end clients. These were beautiful Art Deco pieces from the 1920s, pulled from a forgotten theater. But Drew also entered the risky world of fake antiques and shady dealers. Still, the deal tripled his yearly income. Some competitors weren't happy. Rumors started flying about people trying to block his supply chain. By 2004, Drew wrote an article called Salvaging Industrial Heritage that shocked people. He explained how many valuable old machines were being destroyed in scrapyards. He said 70% of the UK's industrial sites had already been lost between 1990 and 2000. He even saved a steam engine from the 1850s worth $50,000 just before it was crushed. The article made national news. People flooded his shop. Foot traffic rose 150% in just a few months. Some critics said he was just glamorizing junk, but it didn't matter. His voice started changing laws. 12 historic sites were saved because of it. Then everything changed in 2011, when Salvage Hunters aired for the first time on Quest TV. The show was a hit from night one. Drew had traveled to the Scottish Highlands and found cast-iron garden urns at an abandoned estate. He talked the price down from $1,500 to $800, sold them for $2,200. During filming, a storm nearly ruined everything, but Drew made it work, and 500,000 people tuned in. This was the start of something huge. By 2015, Salvage Hunters had reached 100 episodes. His net worth soared to $8 million. But his personal life was falling apart. He'd been having an affair with a married woman. It led to a pub fight in January 2015. The woman's husband was fined over £1,000. Drew got banned from local pubs. The scandal didn't stop the show, though. Ratings actually jumped to 1 million viewers. Drama sells, I guess. Meanwhile, Drew had met Rebecca back in 1998. She worked at a real estate firm, and something just clicked between them. They got married that same year. Their son, Tom, was born in 1999. Life moved fast, but they found joy in it. They didn't just raise a child, they raised him in a world of antiques. Little Tom would polish silverware while his parents worked. By 2004, when he was just 5, he could already tell the difference between fake and real items. In 2003, they had their daughter, Grace. By then, they were living in a beautiful old chapel Drew had bought in 1995 for only $10,000. It was abandoned when he found it. He turned it into a home and filled it with about $50,000 worth in salvaged treasures. One of them was Mick Jagger's old toilet. He turned it into a flower planter. Odd, but it fit somehow. In 2005, Rebecca officially joined Drew in the business. She'd left a big fashion job in Hong Kong where she made $80,000 a year. But after flipping one vase in 2004 for a $5,000 profit, she saw a new path. Her skills helped the business grow fast. By 2006, profits were up 30%. She could look at an old sofa, say it was worth $1,000, and it would sell for 3 times that. But in 2015, something happened that changed everything. Drew began an affair with Amanda Thomas, who was married to his close friend. They met at antique events and hid the relationship under business. It went on for 2 years while Drew was still married to Rebecca. Then in 2017, everything came out. Other women started texting Amanda, saying they'd been with Drew too. Amanda finally told her husband. He'd already noticed Drew's number on her phone too many times. Everything exploded right when Drew's fame was at its peak. In October 2017, it got worse. Her husband confronted Drew at a pub called the Liverpool Arms in North Wales. Drew had sent him a text calling him a coward. That night, the guy punched him. Glasses broke, Drew hit the floor, and chaos followed. The husband was fined over £1,000 in court, but Drew was also banned from 44 pubs under the local pub watch rule. His reputation was falling apart. Later that same year, Drew and Rebecca divorced. It had been 19 years. The court called it irreconcilable differences, but everyone knew it was because of the affairs. They split everything, including that old chapel. The property alone was worth nearly $800,000. Rebecca made sure their kids were stable. Drew moved away, started over in Bath. In 2018, he finally admitted to the affairs in an interview. He said the stress from work got to be too much. He made bad choices. But people didn't see it as an excuse. They saw a pattern. He'd moved into a $1.5 million Georgian townhouse in Bath after the divorce. He wanted to rebuild, but things kept going wrong. In 2021, the home renovations hit a wall. He found hidden rot in the structure and spent over $100,000 more than expected. The budget had already been $200,000. He only finished a few rooms upstairs. The rest stayed empty. In 2022, he shut down his antique store in Conwy. It had become a tourist spot since opening in 2017. Fans came from everywhere hoping to meet him. Even celebrities like Jamie Oliver visited. But after the divorce and scandal, things changed. He announced the closure quietly, asked people not to visit anymore. It was the end of something big. Then in 2024, he auctioned off most of his personal collection, over 620 pieces. The auction raised over $800,000. One item, a fairground boat from 1930, sold for $7,000. Another piece linked to Sir Malcolm Campbell's Bluebird project went for $17,000. But for Drew, it wasn't about the money. It was painful. He called the pieces old friends. Letting them go meant letting go of parts of his life. By 2023, Drew had left Salvage Hunters after more than 200 episodes. He said he was exhausted. He wanted privacy. He thanked the team, including Rebecca, who'd helped him build the show from the start. But too much had happened. Divorce, scandal, court cases, public shame. He just couldn't keep up the image anymore. He stepped away to focus on small restorations and finishing his home in Bath. It was a quiet goodbye to a loud and messy chapter. Sometimes the things we collect end up collecting us, I suppose. Drew spent his whole life saving forgotten treasures from destruction. In the end, he couldn't save his own life from falling apart. But maybe that's the next restoration project.